It's about time that I made a video called New Gear Syndrome, and this comes from the days where I used to coach archery. Yes, I used to coach archery. That was my job before gold prospecting. Archery, like so many other hobbies on this planet and sports and things that we participate in, is full of interesting and expensive equipment. A lot of this equipment says that it is going to make you better, it's going to improve the game, you're going to have more success, blah, 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 blah. And often they are accurate in their statements. In the right hands, those pieces of equipment can make you a lot better. I'm going to give you an example. Archery is very much like metal detecting and gold prospecting in the sense that you get what you pay for. If you buy a $100 metal detector, you're going to get $100 worth of metal detector. If you buy a $1,000 metal detector, you're going to get $1,000 worth of metal detector. And the difference between $100 and $1,000 is a lot. And the difference in metal detecting between something like a $1,000 detector and a $5,000 metal detector, or a $5,000 metal detector and a $10,000 metal detector is noticeable. At my range, where I coached a lot of amateur archers as well as professional athletes, there was a thing that used to happen to a lot of them where they got caught up in the advertising and didn't understand about a thing I ended up calling New Gear Syndrome. The example I want to give was a gentleman who purchased a $3,500 archery setup for target shooting. Now, a $3,500 setup in archery is fairly pricey, especially for an amateur. You're talking about buying some really good equipment. But out of a 300-point possible round on an indoor range, he'd be likely to be shooting in the 240s to 250s, which is average. And I distinctly remember the day where I ordered and installed a brand new sight for him. And he was very excited to get this sight because it was meant to make it easier to hold the sight picture and easier to get points and so on and so forth. This sight was meant to be the new duck's nuts, the bee's knees, the thing that was going to improve his game. And it worked for a time. His scores improved to the point where he was sort of in the 270s, low 80s, and that's not too bad. You're getting up there. You're starting to get to a reasonable level where you may consider being able to compete and possibly, in the right conditions, even make a podium place. But it didn't last. It only lasted for a little while before his scores dwindled back down into those mid 200s. And the reason is quite simple. It's because of the phenomenon that is called New Gear Syndrome. And it blindsides people, New Gear Syndrome, because it looks like, for all intents and purposes, the thing that you bought is making it better. You're getting better because of the thing that you purchased, not because you're practicing, and that's the trick. You see, when you buy something like a brand new sight, or you buy a brand new metal detector, or a gold pen, or sluice box, or whatever it might be, you're super enthusiastic about going out and using it. It's exciting getting a piece of new equipment. So you dedicate more time to your craft so you can use that piece of equipment. Now, it's not to say that the piece of equipment doesn't have an effect. I can speak from experience after running an SDC 2300 in my area, which is a $4,000 metal detector, and only finding a handful of nuggets over a couple of years, versus the GPX 6000, which is an $8,000 metal detector. I can run that machine in the same exact spots I ran the SDC, and I'm getting more gold. Yes, technology certainly plays a part in it, but what's more important more of the time is the fact that you're out there doing it. So if you buy a brand new gold panning set that's saying that it's going to be faster and easier to use and blah, 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 but you go out twice as much, chances are you're going to find twice as much gold. And that can easily be laid at the feet of having purchased the new piece of equipment, when in fact, it's actually because you're out there participating in the hobby, practicing. Skill is almost always going to be more important than the equipment that you choose. Almost always. You need to, part of fixing New Gear Syndrome is matching the gear above your current skill level. In archery, that was very simple. It would be instead of shooting a 20-pound set of limbs, once they've got used to that draw weight, we would set them up with 25-pound limbs. And that would allow them to get further range and better flat trajectories of the arrow and overall better results. But usually when you whack on an extra 5 pounds to the limbs, it takes people a while to adjust. And the same goes for a lot of other hobbies, is that you always want to have your skill set trying to just catch up a little bit to the equipment's capabilities. And that way it forces you to practice and it forces you to get better. It's the same thing with metal detecting. A lot of people say, oh, I've got $800 to buy a gold prospecting machine. I really want to do this. I'm in Western Australia where the ground's really difficult and hard. Well, I would say to them, save up a little bit of extra money and purchase the lower end of the best metal detectors available, because that is going to give you the best possibilities to grow into the hobby, as opposed to getting frustrated with a piece of equipment that doesn't suit you. And hopefully, because it is good, you're going to be driven to practice and get out there and do it a whole lot so that you can get the skills to be a prospector. Basically, you want the gear a little bit ahead of your skill set. And if you can do that, you're going to have a good time. But when you kick over the really big nugget, don't thank the gear, thank your persistence at developing the skills for the hobby. Because at the end of the day, big gold specimens like this one aren't really found by metal detectors. The metal detector only tells you that they're in the ground. It's you that finds them.